Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Not About Wrestling. I'm your host, Chris Lemonati, and my guest today is former ECW announcer, commentator, manager, and the Quintessential Studmuffin, Mr. Joel Gertner. ECW has a really special place in my heart. My friends and I were absolute marks for the company. I've seen ECW shows at the Arena in Philadelphia, the Trenton CYO in Trenton, New Jersey. I saw an outdoor show on a baseball field where I actually played baseball as a kid. And I even stood in the freezing rain outside the Asbury Park Convention Center to watch Living Dangerously 99 and be there firsthand when Bam Bam and Taz put a goddamn hole in the ring. You know, as a rabid ECW fan, I don't remember the company without Joel Gertner. He joined ECW in 1995 at the age of 20 to work as a part-time ring announcer and the official timekeeper. Eventually, Gertner transitioned to being the heel announcer, and he bounced around from performer to performer until finally hooking up with the Dudley Boyz. The Dudley Boyz eventually became the most dominant tag team in ECW, and Gertner's ring introductions and limericks got filthier and filthier with every passing show.
Joel, Lady Gaga advocates celibacy. What an absolute disgrace. If she won't let me stuff her muff, then I'll just poke her face.
Gertner was there for the highs and lows of the hardcore revolution, and he saw it all firsthand. He was the color commentator when the company signed their TNN television deal, and he was also one of the last employees left when the company folded in 2001. These days, Gertner works as a ring announcer for various different companies and hosts more than a few podcasts. In this interview, Joel and I discuss a bunch of different things. We talk about his early addiction to TV game shows. He actually wanted to be a TV game show host when he was a kid. Why he dropped out of Cornell University to join ECW. Being an absolute heat magnet on the mic. Where he came up with his ideas for the filthy limericks. And he tells an amazing story about the night that he actually forgot to put on his signature neck brace and what happened right in the middle of the ring when it was pointed out to him. So, ladies and gentlemen, entering the podcast, hailing from Brooklyn, New York, this is Joel Gertner.
And we're back, everybody, and I am here with, and Joel, I gotta do it. I'm sure everyone does it to you. Well. Does everyone do that?
Very good. Well played. Well played.
Does everyone do that?
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'm going to pretend.
God bless. I mean, thank God. Yeah.
Yeah. So, obviously, we're here with Joel Gertner. How many times a day do you get that?
In person, not so many. Online, social media, a lot. Okay. Between Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Well is pretty, it's pretty well assigned to me, to the point where Pat McAfee had kind of been starting out a lot of his promos with it a few weeks ago, and people were like asking me if there was heat or asking me how I felt about it, that kind of thing. And I'll do it too. Like every once in a while on a Raw or SmackDown, somebody will just randomly start out their promo with well. And I'll jump on Twitter and I'll be like, well, indeed, at whoever.
Well, I mean, the trend now is WWE tends to trademark everything. So do you want to jump on the trademark and get a well?
Oh, gosh, I guess informally it's mine. Maybe I should. I don't know. I'll look into it. Who knows, man? I've been using it so long. Like I say, you know, if anybody else uses it, thankfully it's kind of looked at as an homage, and they're kind of borrowing it. But maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll throw it in like an envelope, mail it to myself, common law copyrighted or something.
There you go. Or just send yourself like an ECW tape or something.
Right.
And don't open it. Before we jump on the call, and I do it too, So everybody gets on Zoom calls these days, and the first thing you do is you adjust yourself, and you kind of like make sure you fixed your hair. My hat, I've not been able to get my hat straight. I've done 15 of these. I've done 25 of another podcast. I don't know what straightens my hat, but I'm going to figure it out eventually because I always look like a Dominican baseball player who just stepped on the mound and he's purposely moving his hat.
You gotta get a hat straightener, man. I'm
Yeah.
sure if Amazon doesn't have them, I'm sure Wish does, or Guilt, or somebody, Farfetch or something. Yeah, man, I had right over, not even in the center, like cool, like Razor Ramon or Superman, but like right off here, I had like a little S curl, and I was like, no, that's not even the right place. That's not going to do. And I kind of aestheticized myself.
Well, the fascinating thing about that, so on the website, I didn't write about it, but one of my coworkers did. The number of Zoom calls and face-to-face things like this that people are doing now, an uptick in plastic surgery because people don't like the way they look on Zoom calls.
Wow.
Which I find insane because I don't think the camera, like, and you know this because you spent half of your life in front of a camera, what you see on the camera isn't really what people are seeing in real life. So you're basing it on, good.
Sure, like I'm 153 pounds, like you said, and that's not a function. It's not so much about that I've spent half my life or more than half my life on camera. It's a function of the camera adds 15 pounds. And as you know, if it's a pay-per-view, you've got 4 cameras on you and a crane, you know what I mean? So, not to say that look, svelte as I am, svelte as I'm not, however, depending on your metric, you don't get a body like this by accident. Of course, standing waiting for the bus, you don't become like this. But yeah, man, I'm 153 pounds, twisted steel, sex appeal, and and the girls wouldn't have anything less. And because they don't want anything less, they get a whole lot more.
Were you born the quintessential stud muffin, or did you grow into that?
I was born Joel Gertner. That's probably I was born very early before wrestling. I wanted to be a game show host.
Oh.
Was I born the quintessential stud muffin? Starting from age 16 and until 20, I was Joey Jaguar on the indie circuit.
Okay.
And he was kind of stud muffin, but he was also kind of wealthy, snot-nosed, silver spoon punk. He was kind of an amalgamation of everything else good that was out there at the time, like Cornell and Paulie and that kind of thing. Was I born the stud muffin? Maybe. There might have been some innate stud muffin tendencies from jump. But I've certainly filled out into more of a grander version, more of a kind of luxe version of stud muffin as the years have gone by.
Let's go back to the game show thing. How did that, as a kid, you wanted to be a game show host?
Yeah, I discovered game shows before I discovered wrestling. I probably discovered game shows when I was 4 or 5 versus finding wrestling at 8 or 9. So there was definitely probably, call it a 4-year period in the early 80s, I guess, where just infatuated with game shows, just loved them, had memorized, knew the host of every game show that was on the air, and even going back into the past, into the 70s and whatnot, to the point where it was a way that, I could get engaged into conversation with adults. Grown adults would be talking to this 4 or 5-year-old kid, 6-year-old kid, and I'd talk game shows with them, ask them about TV from days gone by, and tell them, hey, I know the host of every game show, try me, and they would. So yeah, just loved it. So yeah, 40 years of loving game shows and still do. And before finding wrestling, I thought that was my calling. I thought nothing would be better than to be a game show host.
Which were your favorites?
Gosh, I liked Pitfall. Okay. I liked anything with Trebek, really. I mean, I liked Battle Stars and High Rollers too, but I liked Pitfall, Card Sharks, Las Vegas Gambit, Press Your Luck, the original. Gosh, there were so many great ones in the 80s.
If you could envision any of those game show hosts maybe making the transition to wrestling, who do you think could have?
Trebek could have cut a fierce promo and did. There's urban legend that on the last episode of High Rollers that he was a bit inebriated, and he kind of went in and went after some of the contestants after they were doing their little bio at the beginning of the show. So yeah, absolutely, I know Trebek could hold his own. Jim Perry had a good look. I don't know. Jim Perry would have probably been a guy that got a little bit of a run as a babyface and maybe also a heel, but I think he could have done real well with it.
I think Chuck Woolery could get some heat.
Chuck Woolery could get heat, absolutely, and in real life may actually have, because he was the original host of Wheel of Fortune and got replaced. Chuck Woolery for sure. Regis. Bob Eubanks is a big wrestling fan to the point where he was actually a local promoter at one point in Arizona for at least one house show for World Championship Wrestling.
Wow.
Yeah, ton of guys could probably do real well with it.
Yeah, I feel like they all have that, maybe not announcer, but maybe manager appeal, for the guys that couldn't talk. So
yeah, agreed. Yeah.
How did you go from the transition of loving game shows to loving wrestling?
I found it. I saw it for the first time, and it was like nothing else. I love television, and it was like nothing else that was on television. It was a human cartoon. I loved, even when I was young, I loved dialogue. I loved just crazy talk, just listening to stuff that you didn't hear on the street. And you got that from guys like Roddy Piper and Jesse Ventura, and all of the managers, the heel managers of the day, your Freddie Blassie. And so I gravitated towards it. I loved it for the same reason that a few years later I would love the Morton Downey Jr. show. It was just kind of for the shock value and just, again, for the, you're not going to find this anywhere else on television. Plus, I love the in-ring stuff. I love the actual between the ropes wrestling. But in addition to the crazy talk, I love the crazy characters. I loved the human cartoons, the freak shows. I loved George the Animal Steel, Missing Link, Kamala. Guys like that drew me to wrestling because, again, you're not seeing guys like that on Dukes of Hazzard, Dallas, Dynasty, whatever.
Right. Were you a WCW guy, WWF guy? Which?
I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. So geographically and chronologically, based on my first exposure, I'm probably always going to be a homer for the WWF of the 80s. But once I got cable, UHF and cable, later in the 80s, kind of the mid to late 80s and late 80s, became a big fan of the NWA, and eventually loved a lot of the stuff that WCW was doing, even though in many respects, some of the best stuff that they were doing was stuff that they were doing on a grander level that we were actually doing, and that they kind of, for lack of a better term, borrowed from ECW. But like the Lucha and some of the other hardcore, whatever. But yeah, loved WCW was great. NWA with the Four Horsemen and the Road Warriors and all that was amazing. Yeah.
We're going to get into the influence of ECW a little bit later on. But the one thing I wanted to touch on is so when you were a kid, I grew up in Jersey. We're not too far away from each other geographically. I'm going to assume that you also I had exposure to like so many different federations around here. Like I had WWE, WCW, NWA. I used to get AWA on ESPN. I would occasionally get World Class. Like I feel like that helps as a wrestling fan because you could see all the different things and you weren't exposed to just one type of show.
Yeah, I feel like rural and suburban got cable first. So on our block in Brooklyn, we didn't get cable and the hot boxes that came alongside cable. We didn't get that until 89, probably second half of 89. So all of the territories that I was watching in more like 87, 88, all of that was coming, I believe, from Jersey, if we're getting technical about it, on a station called U68.
I think
a UHF station, Channel 68, that all day was essentially a version of MTV.
Mhm.
They showed music videos all day, with the exception of Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. for an hour. 6 p.m. for an hour, Monday through Friday. Different day of the week. Every day of the week, they showed a different territory.
That's
I
amazing.
think WCW was on twice during the week. They showed Pro and they showed Worldwide. But aside from that, they were showing UWF, Bill Watts's. They were showing World Class. And they were showing, I want to say one day a week was California Championship, which was probably the most indie out of the 5. And yeah, I got exposure to those territories that way. I was already a tape well, by 87, I wasn't actively trading tapes, but by 89, I'm a tape trader and I'm seeing stuff into the past and all different territories. But U68, before being a tape trader and before getting cable, was my first TV exposure to anything other than WWF. I would buy the magazines, so I would see guys and see territories prior to getting U68. Once they started doing wrestling, it was all over. I mean, I couldn't, other kids were out playing between 6 and 7 because it was either before dinner or right after dinner. It was after school, and that was like high time to go out and play ball. And for me, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7, I was just glued to the TV.
Did you have any like wrestling friends as a kid?
I did. Some of my friends liked wrestling. I had wrestling pen pal types, wrestling. Just fans that like other people that would call into radio shows like I did. And there was kind of, there was newsletters and stuff. So yeah, I mean, between just, a kid or two on my block, a kid or two in school, and then, a few people just through trying to make connections within the wrestling world. Even as a kid, I probably had 5 or 10 wrestling friends.
Do you remember your first live event?
Yes.
What was it?
Yes. January of 86.
Okay.
At the Garden.
Oh, what'd you say?
It was the 2-year anniversary of Hogan having the title.
Okay.
I don't think they necessarily billed it as such, but it was.
Okay.
And it was, I believe, in the 2 years since he had beaten Iron Sheik, it was the first time he lost a match at the Garden defending the title, because he lost by countout to Macho Man Randy Savage.
Wow. That's a great main event right there.
Yep.
I saw.
Yeah.
Good.
No, just that match is in WWE lore, in their canon, they just they kind of love to feature it in different video stuff that they do, and I think one of the volumes of Best of the WWF has it on there, and maybe one of their Savage compilations, and maybe they probably did Hulkamania out to like Hulkamania 5 or 6. So one of the Hulkamanias probably has it on there too.
The first show I ever went to was on top was Hogan and Orndorff. It was right after Orndorff turned, and I feel like Hogan got the win, but by disqualification, like something happened. And I went with my grandfather, and he was screaming his face off.
What venue?
At the Spectrum.
Oh, are you south in Jersey?
So I'm centrally located. I'm kind of
okay.
like the best. Well, okay. So central doesn't exist to some people in New Jersey. Like it doesn't. So to North Jersey people, I'm South Jersey, and to South Jersey people, I'm North Jersey. But there is a central part of New Jersey.
Are you anywhere near like Middletown or?
I'm just outside of Princeton.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, New York is an hour and 15, hour and 20. Philly is 45 minutes.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would go to the Spectrum for a lot of events. I did see stuff at I saw stuff at the Garden. I saw, I think, one Nassau Coliseum show. But Spectrum was mostly because back then they used to do, I don't know if you're familiar, the cable channel Prism.
Yep.
And they used to broadcast the cards on Prism. So I actually ended up watching the show live and then like 2 weeks later watching it on Prism. And for some reason enjoying it much more on cable because we were so high in the nosebleeds that but I remember my grandfather literally screaming his face off about stuff. Yeah.
What's crazy is that there were other RSNs too. There was like MSG and there was like Nesson. Like there were a bunch of different big markets that would show their monthly house show on cable. And so they'd be going to the building once a month it would be free for anybody who had basic cable TV, and they were still selling it out every month.
Yes.
And that's what I think is craziest, is that you didn't have to go to the Garden to see the MSG show. You could stay home and watch it on your couch or in your bed. And they were still getting people to go into the city, pay the money, and do it every 4 weeks. And I think that's amazing. Hopefully the business will get back to a point where it can fire on every cylinder like that. I don't know that you can run the same town every month. So, but yeah, that was pretty strong business.
I think a lot of it has to do with, actually Eric Bischoff talks about this a lot on his podcast. Wrestling is the only type of entertainment where the people that you see, the people that you fall in love with, your heroes, they come to your town. Like if you like movies, like your favorite actor isn't coming to your town at any time soon, especially if you live in like God knows where, Idaho. But once every couple months, your favorite wrestler is going to be 300 feet away in a ring. And that's, I think, was the draw for it.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah. So I think, and I hope, I don't know after all this if house shows are going to come back, but the live events, I feel like those will be big, at least in the first couple months, just for people to get out. So, but let's go back. So let's transition from you as a kid to then you, I read online, you went to Cornell for a little bit, and then
for 3 years.
Yeah. And then you decided, nope, you wanted to be a wrestler.
Yep.
How'd that go over?
I knew about the wrestling end of it before I went to Cornell even.
Okay.
So it was like I'm doing the indies and I'm at Cornell, and I wouldn't have left the Cornell for the indies. Nothing against the indies, but when it was ECW and there was TV and touring involved, and also taking a bet on yourself that was a bet on the company, where I thought that it did have a chance of becoming a top player, and it did become a chance for me of something that I could make a living at. And once I saw that I could make a living at pro wrestling, I said to myself, well, I'm here at Cornell, their communication department isn't all that great, but across town at Ithaca College, there's the #3 TV radio department in the country. And I'm taking classes there, and I'm already the sports director at the radio station in Ithaca, the NBC News Radio. I'm working for Cornell Sports Network production. I'm the PA announcer for 7 or 8 different Cornell teams. And now I'm doing all that so that I can get a job in wrestling or get a job at ESPN or something like that. And now a job in wrestling avails itself around the end of my 3rd year there. And it was really, again, it was me betting on myself and betting on the company. And I've always been the kind of person that would rather regret what I do than regret not doing it and then have to wonder. So yeah, I cut the cord at Cornell, and I left hoping that maybe, they had told me that, the door wasn't necessarily closed forever, but it was kind of a mutual decision where they wanted me to take some time off, and I didn't quite feel the need to be there, and we parted amicably. So was the fallback like sports talk? Yeah, I think the fallback would have been sports talk, some sort of TV like news, sports admin, sports marketing, sports business, maybe sports law, but that would have required more years at school. And I was always good at school. I always felt that school was unpaid work. And, it's good to be self-aware. There are a lot of traits that I have. I think I'm a good person that's good in many ways at many things. Work ethic and discipline are probably not in the top 5. And I'm aware of that. And I'm a stronger person for being aware of who I am and how I am. And I know that I'd rather work to better myself at the things that I'm good at than try to become mediocre at the things that I'm not as good at. So I don't know that going 3 more years to law school would have been in the cards, but something along those lines was probably the plan B. It's funny, you touched on something there that I've heard many different times in like different
motivational speeches and like self-help books that sometimes people spend so much time trying to get better at the things that they're not good at that they don't spend the time becoming great at the things they are good at. And I think you learn that early, like, why am I going to beat my head against the wall to try and do these two things when I'm really good at these things? Let me get better at them.
Wrestling school.
Yeah.
I found a wrestling school. I found a wrestling gym in the city when I was 16. I knew I needed to, and I also wanted to, minus the pain, take at least one wrestling class. And I took at least one wrestling class, maybe two. And I learned the fundamentals of taking a back bump and running the ropes.
Okay.
And I was sore from the back bumps, and I was even more sore and got welts from the ropes. And I knew that I wasn't an athlete in this lifetime ever going to be. And I said to myself, this is great, because now when I'm a color commentator, if I'm ever a color commentator, I can talk about, oh, you think you can execute the maneuver that you just saw? I'll have you know that you wouldn't even be able to run the ropes and take a back. And I knew that I could use that in my toolbox. But my bread wasn't buttered to be a wrestler, and I knew that. But like you say, I did it a little so that I could know that it wasn't for me and why and how it wasn't for me, so that I could use that.
Well, the taking the bumps kind of came in handy later.
Yeah.
Which we'll get into that.
Touché.
So you get hired on by ECW. What was the original role?
Timekeeper and backup ring announcer. They were just starting to bring in lucha guys.
Okay.
They hadn't brought in Damien yet. So there was, I think, no reason for them to have known that I spoke Japanese, and no reason for them to have known that I spoke Spanish. So timekeeper and a second ring announcer. And then from there, foreign language ring announcer, primary ring announcer, foreign language ring announcer, heel ring announcer, manager, and then color commentator and co-host at TNN.
When did it go? At what point did it go ring announcer to heel ring announcer?
When our primary ring announcer came back. Paul was big into that. Paul, if you earned your spot and if you were valuable and you were a talent and an asset, Paul wouldn't just cut you loose because what you were doing didn't fit at the moment or anymore. So when Bob Ortiz came back from a hiatus, he was the full-time ring announcer at the arena and everywhere again. And I got, as per Paul, moved sideways. And thankfully for me, every time I moved sideways, I performed well enough that it was a step up, which I'm grateful about.
I read online somewhere that part of it too, you were urged by Shane Douglas to kind of go a little bit heelish and start making fun of some of the baby faces. Were you open to that in the beginning?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Was it Shane that said it?
Not to me.
Okay.
I'm not gonna say that that there's no validity.
Okay.
I don't know if I've heard that, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay.
And they bounced me around different heels, but I kind of stabilized with him and was with him, I think, for longer than some of the other acts that I was only with for a week or two. So he may have spoken to Paul and requested me to be with him. I'm not sure. It wouldn't surprise me if that is how it went down, because a lot of the guys, especially those either with ECW tenure for a while or guys who'd been in the business a bit, a lot of guys were chipping in with creative, and it was really a group effort, and it was really kind of an open forum when it came to creative, and Paul listened to a lot of the guys. So it's possible.
Do you think that helped when you're coming out of school and you're a young kid, that you immerse yourself in a collaborative effort? Whereas if you somehow found a way to connect to a WCW or a WWE, those were very much corporate structures. and you might have been, kind of disenfranchised with it after a while. Whereas with ECW, it was like, everybody does this. This person does 7 different things. Like, how did that play into it?
I liked, ECW was perfect in the sense that it was independent, but it was big. There wasn't a lot of money behind it, but it was a draw. It had this kind of cult following. It was just the popularity, the halo effect that it had. I mean, that's what made it, and like you say, it wasn't corporate and it wasn't structured at all in any way. There was no pyro and there was no lights, and, we stole all the bootleg music. And, but that's what made it, and when I first went and did TNA, which I think was a lot more comparable production-wise, I had never done WCW, so I'm not the person to make this comparison, so I'll make it anyway. From what I hear some other people say, it was very much a WCW-like, in some ways, project. And it was, it was scripted more, for sure. It was scripted at all, for sure. You get stuff with bullet points, you get little scripts, you get a lot of people, kind of answering to each other above you and everything like that. And I'm not adverse to that. I mean, I think, great productions require great production. There's a reason WWE has a department called Magic, and anybody who wants to poo-poo it is a hypocrite, because a lot of the things that they'll then tell you that they enjoy most that have happened on their TV has happened with the help of Magic or with the production truck. So, but I don't know if I would. I mean, I didn't wind up clicking with TNA. With WWE, I did the ECW One Night Stand 05 pay-per-view, but wasn't brought back for the second one or for the series. And a lot of the time as talent, you're kind of not told why and if there's reasoning behind it. But I didn't click or acclimate as well as I did within ECW, where, like you say, it's just that kind of, just a little engine that could kind of, everybody just helps it chug along, and a real family vibe. We had so many guys come through who would have been to WCW, WWF, or both, and they would say, nothing's like this. I'm happy to come to work. Locker room morale is good. And they'd say things that you would never, who would ever expect that in more than half of companies that locker room morale is bad? Like, why should that be a regular thing? But we would have guys tell us that, for them, in their experience, locker room morale wasn't ever really great until they came to us. So I don't know, I feel blessed that, again, without wrestling, without being a guy that's in there doing the physical magic, except for, like you say, taking bumps and that kind of thing, being on defense and a bit of a crash test dummy. Without that, just talking and acting and writing and thinking, I was able to become a big enough fish in that pond that I stayed until the end and didn't leave.
How did the connection with the Dudleys come about?
They were the last act that I was bounced to. I was bounced to Devon and Axel, I think, maybe from Shane. And then Devon turned on Axel. There was the whole, there were a bunch of turns, twists and turns. I think Dudleys went for at least 3 years. Maybe if you count the early Dudley stuff, maybe it went for more like 4 years. I can't count right now, but we got a lot out of the Dudleys, and I don't know. I went to Devon and Axel, and then I was put with the Dudleys. I don't know how long term the booking was. I don't know if it was known for the months before Barely Legal that they wanted the Dudleys in that spot with me. I don't know. Sometimes it seemed like stuff was being booked day to day or week to week. but you never know whether certain arcs were, months out.
Mhm.
I was so young.
Mhm.
I started in ECW 3 days after my 20th birthday. So my whole run there was from me being 20 to me being 25.
Mhm.
So I wasn't privy to, I made suggestions.
Mhm.
Some of them were taken. And when it came to my stuff, I wrote 99% of my stuff. But I wasn't privy a lot of the time to some of the booking decisions and some of the office stuff.
Mhm.
So, I don't know, but I got put with the Dudleys and it clicked, and we ran together forever.
So set the scene for me, because now that I think about it, I put your age into perspective. You're 21, 22 years old. You're with the Dudleys, who already themselves are heat magnets. You're getting heat in front of a usually always hostile Philadelphia crowd. Love them to death, but like they just want to punch somebody out. And you're just getting rained down with booze. And like you think they want to murder you. How does that feel to a 21-year-old Joel Gertner?
Great. It felt like it felt like everything. It felt like everything was firing on all cylinders. like the plan to leave Cornell. Yeah, I don't know, man. Tough to answer. I mean, I kind of felt like I was at the top of the world, even though, to everybody, to the outsider looking in, even when you're in ECW, you're not yet at the top of the world. Maybe you could get to WWF or WCW. Wasn't a concern for me. I wanted to keep moving sideways, and I wanted to keep moving up, and I wanted to get as high up the ladder within ECW as I could. And that kept happening. A lot of guys, unfortunately, a lot feel like they got carrots dangled in front of them, and some of the things that they were promised didn't come through and didn't happen. For me, I just things worked out. People a lot of the time say, "Could you have left? Why did you stay?" I never thought about leaving because, well, I had a conversation with WWF, and then later on towards the end, as ECW was closing, there were like, I don't even want to say there were feelers with WCW. It was nothing official, but with WWF, I spoke with an agent and had what seemed like an offer. Maybe that was me just testing the waters so that I could. It was right before I signed an ECW contract, and maybe that was a way of me kind of knowing my worth and just doing some due diligence. But I didn't jump on it. I didn't make it happen, and I never wanted to leave because I never wanted to leave because I just it just always felt right to be in ECW, and I don't know whether that was me wanting to be a bigger fish in a smaller pond, or have more creative control, or the schedule, which we got to 4 days a week eventually. We were doing like triple shots, alternating with quadruple shots. So we were doing, I think, 14 days a month, some months, but it was still a good schedule. A lot of stuff was local. When I was with TNN, sometimes I was only working once a week doing production. And it wasn't very far from where I was living. So your weekly check sometimes is just for 1 day on and 6 days off. So I don't know, man. And then I'm trading stock during the week, and so I don't know. I don't even remember what the question was.
It's okay.
Sorry about that, but
so let me kind of transition real quick to the feelers from WWE. Just as a outside fan who grew up watching at that time, like that was like the height of my fandom. Sometimes it felt like, and this might not have been your situation, but a lot of the situations, especially with the relationship with WWE and ECW, sometimes it felt like the WWE took ECW guys not to have them, but more just so ECW didn't have them. Did you sometimes feel that way?
It's possible. I think our partnership with WWE, such as it was, which was kind of one-sided and I think benefited them more than it benefited us.
Absolutely.
We got, and we got people to kind of help train. We were kind of like a performance center. We were kind of like developmental, and we got guys that either needed a break from WWE or needed to test out a new gimmick or whatever. So we would get a Flash Funk, and we would get an Al Snow, and we would get, we'd also get Brockus. And, but I think more so WCW would park guys. WCW would take guys and do next to nothing with them, just sit on them. They would take guys like Sabu and Sandman and Mikey Whipwreck, and I guess they created a hardcore division and stuff like that. But I don't know. But I mean, you could be onto something though. I don't know. I mean, WWE definitely, like I say, I think the partnership was more beneficial to them. Yeah.
So you're with the Dudleys. You're at the height of the popularity, and then they sign with WWE. Like, how do you feel? Are you deflated? Are you what? I mean, obviously you're happy for them because they're your friends, but are you like, okay, but what happens to Joel Gertner?
They pulled me aside, and I'm trying to, the timeline of 99 is so tricky because I was being told along the way that we were getting a deal, and we got the TNN deal, and it started in August, and I was being told a few months before that we'd get the deal, and so I could be the color commentator and this and that, and that's right around the time that the Dudleys are leaving, in mid to late, I think, around there, 99. And when they were going to leave, and they had maybe already signed and they were working their way out or whatever, they pulled me aside when they knew that I had a contract on the table and that I was about to sign. And it would be tough for me to remember everything exactly that they said. The end result of it was me not going there with them. I don't know if there could have been a different result. What I most remember is them asking me if I was really sure that I wanted to sign. And I don't know why they would imply that other than that there might be greener grass to. So it was just, they had that going on, that they were going to leave and that WWE wanted them and they were going there. And I was on my journey of taking, the next step up, being a contract player for the first time. And it was just the timing of it all. I think on May 1st, I signed my deal. And by August, we were on TNN.
Do you think maybe they saw kind of the writing on the wall with where things were going and were maybe kind of hoping they were going to a new federation? They couldn't say, we'll bring you with us. But I'm sure they thought, if we're there for a little while and we say, hey, this guy worked with us in ECW, just because of where they saw the company going, paychecks bouncing, things not going great. Maybe they're trying to protect you in a way, or like give you hope, for a future. Maybe.
I mean, it could have been anything, I mean, when I talked before about talking to an agent, and I never really need to ever go into the details. So this might be the first time this might be an exclusive for you, but the agent that I talked to was Terry Taylor. And the thing that he had put in front of me as his suggestion creatively, we talked money and then we talked creative, and creatively he said, maybe put me with Public Enemy, who they were thinking about bringing in.
Okay.
Looked at the one way, if they see my work with the Dudleys and ECW, like it, and like me for Public Enemy, then hell, they must have loved me with the Dudleys, right?
Yeah,
it's the one way to look at it. Yeah. And then the other way of looking at it is, what if I would have come in with Public Enemy, they did one or two shots, they were gone, maybe one shot on TV, they were gone, would I have been kept?
Right.
Or would I have been tainted, but would I have just been collateral damage? So I don't know. Yeah. History's mysteries.
Yeah. So you stick around. You're the color commentator on TNN. Did you like that better than announcing?
Um, I loved wrestling. I love wrestling. I mean, it didn't matter to me. I loved ring announcing.
Mhm.
When the time was right to do color commentary and co-host, I loved that. Managing. Even we were talking about before what I watched growing up, and who I loved growing up was all the heel managers and guys like Piper and Ventura that cut promos,
Mhm.
and Howard Finkel.
Mhm.
So I loved being a ring announcer, loved being a manager. A lot of the managers made the best color commentators. Loved being a color commentator. Loved it all.
Okay, so there really wouldn't have been anything that you wouldn't have done for if they asked you to do, like you said, you just wanted to move sideways, so you
Yeah.
would have done anything. Let's talk about the last days when it's over. Like how obviously you're feeling terrible, but like, was there a glimmer of hope? Like maybe because there were other federations around that you could have moved on to. Like, how did you feel?
Stayed till the end. Talked to Paul on the phone and said, please let me know anything I need to know that would put reason in my mind not to ever consider in any way, shape, or form asking you for a release.
Mm.
And he couldn't do it at the time. He said, if you've got, if there are feelers out and there's interest and, I mean, this was way at the end. This was after the last pay-per-view.
Mm.
This was, I'm talking about right before, we saw him turn up on WrestleMania. This is probably, if I had to guess the month, maybe I'd say this isn't, I'm not talking about January of 01.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about more like March of 01.
Mm-hmm.
And that was at a time where, for the January pay-per-view, they had put up a billboard. They put up a graphic out of the production truck that said that our next pay-per-view was going to be Living Dangerously 2001. And it never happened. And this was at a time where that show had already been canceled and everybody knew there was going to be no Living Dangerously. Like really, really all the ink was on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And he was honest enough to say, I can't do that for you. I can't really tell you not to ask for a release. So I asked for one and I got one. And I was probably one of the last people there before getting let go. I mean, I think a lot of other people might have asked for their release before that.
Mm-hmm. Let's go back to the good stuff. The Philly crowd, it was nuts. Like, do you remember like any? Did you ever have a feeling? Well, okay, actually, this is what I wanted to ask before. So when you're the heel commentator, well, I'm sorry, when you're the heel announcer, heel commentator, you used to do the limericks. You would like say all the funny off the wall shit. You would make fun of other guys. You often made fun of other guys as a commentator. Did it get you actual heat with anybody?
No.
They were all okay with it?
Everybody took it in stride and knew what it was all about. I probably had heat with some people for getting so much time. Because it got to certain points where what used to be a 1-minute intro was a 5-minute intro.
Mm-hmm.
There are probably people who were getting no TV time, who were wondering why I was getting 5 times as much as I used to.
Mm-hmm.
But no real heat.
I always used to equate it to, I'm a huge Springsteen fan. I used to equate it to like when Springsteen introduces the band. I mean, you had a lot of guys introduced. Like there was like 20 of you Dudley. There's 20 of the Dudleys walking around,
A lot of Dudleys, yeah.
Did you ever have a moment where you kind of just blanked? Like you knew what you wanted to say? Walk me through that.
I tried to make sure, even the stuff that I wrote half an hour before I said it live, I tried to make sure that I had it memorized. There may have been one, wild hair issue where I kind of dropped the ball and had to freestyle and where I might have dropped some verbiage. More so than that, though, in Buffalo, one night, I go out there and I introduce Sign Guy and I introduce Devon, and now it's time to introduce Bubba. And I've been out there for a couple minutes with them already. And Bubba looks at me and he's like, "Where's your neck brace?" And I had forgotten to put my bow tie and neck brace on, which at the time was contrary to character. It wasn't, there was no storyline reason why I'd been out of it. I had just literally forgot to put it on.
Yeah.
And he asked me, "Where's your neck brace?" And as I go from there and start introducing him, I lose my voice. Like you can tell that and by the end of the introduction, my voice, sometimes wasn't as strong as it wasn't but to actually completely by the end of introducing him, not have my voice, I think was definitely a function of psychologically just coming to terms with being a perfectionist. And every other time for the previous 2 years, I'm wearing the bow tie and neck brace. And this time I had forgotten to. So,
were you able to finish it, the promo?
I ran out of steam. By the time I was done introducing him, I had no voice. And I just stayed at ringside and did the physical aspect and managed them and cornered them. And that was it. But yeah, not pleasant. I used to, some nights I'd wear it all night. I was so used to wearing it 3 nights a week that for hours at a time, that there were nights, there was at one point in 97, I'm working a hotel gig overnights, like third shift, 4 or 5 days a week. And the other 2 or 3 days a week, I'm doing ECW. So I think that calendar year, 97, between the 2 jobs, I worked 362 days. I was off 3 days. So we're at a Boston show, Boston area, on a Friday night. We were probably like 7th match. And during like the 2nd match, I gear up and I put my neck brace on and I put the bow tie around it nice and tight. And I'm sitting there, and I'm not going to mind sitting there for 5 matches, because I never did, with the bow tie and neck brace on. And all of a sudden, because I'd been working all week at the hotel, I take like a little bit of a nap. Like I kind of, fall asleep. And then I wake up, just whatever, a moment or 2 later, and I realize I just fell asleep with the damn bow tie and neck brace on. So
I wanted to bring that up too. I recently read Bobby the Brain Heenan's biography, and he actually had legit neck problems. But before that happened, he used to wear the neck brace as, part of his gimmick. And he said that he believes that actually caused neck problems from wearing that neck brace.
Yeah.
Did you have any like uncomfortableness, or do you have any like fallout from that?
No, I mean, I weigh a little bit more than I should. I'm not sure if you can tell, but I'm
you're 153, right?
Side. So back here, I've got like a little bit of kind of, just like kind of a California brown bear might or whatever. Like I've got like a little bit of kind of, maybe like, I don't know what the butcher would call it, like back fat or whatever, like upper back fat. But like, is that, is it more like a hump because of my posture, because I wore a neck brace 12 to 16 hours a week in the 90s? I don't know. Yes, no, maybe so. I mean, who's to tell? But I mean, I think definitely the juice was worth the squeeze, because, wearing that neck brace and bow tie created a gimmick, and it created, it left a mark, and it created a career. I went to a convention. This is another time I forgot it. I went to a convention 5 or 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, a big event in New York City at one of the hotels in Queens. And I'm paired up with Bam Margera's dad. And I'm sitting at the table with Bam Margera's dad. And I had forgotten the neck brace and bow tie somehow at home. So I got the 8x10s on the table, but I'm sitting there without the bow tie and neck brace. Man, I don't know if Rent on the Table came back. I mean, honestly, but people were looking at me. I might as well have just been the guy sitting next to Bam Margera's dad. Like, I might as well have not woke up that morning and got out of bed, not having that bow tie and neck brace. Because even if people do recognize me, if they're going to want a picture with me wearing it, if I don't have it there, that kind, you know what I mean? And conventions are so competitive that, so long story short, having that bow tie and that neck brace has always been a blessing. I got it from taking Total Elimination and just never took it off. And took it off once. And then an hour and a half later on the same show, the Dudleys gave me 3D as they were leaving for WWF. And I wound up back in it. But thankfully, and now I'll be on Twitter or wherever, and people will be like, "Hey, how's your neck? Hey, you still wearing a neck brace?" And, it's something to talk about.
So was it your idea to keep on the neck brace for good?
To make it part of
after
the
you
gear,
took it,
and to patternize it and color it and always have it getting fancier and fancier. Yeah. Yeah, it's a kind of wear just the jacket with no shirt, just chest hair, and a neck brace and a bow tie, and keep the bow tie and put it over the neck brace. I mean, yeah, it was a work in progress, and it was kind of always developing week to week, episodic. But yeah, that was I think yeah, I certainly wasn't adverse to it. The reason the shirt got lost, I know, was a suggestion that I made in Reading, PA. We were working this silo, and it was 95 degrees outside, and it was probably 125 degrees inside. And I remembered like Chris Farley from the Chippendale sketch with Patrick Swayze. And I went over to, I think, Todd Gordon, and I said, and I was a heel announcer at the time, a heel ring announcer. I wasn't with the Dudleys yet, I don't think. Maybe Devon and Axel, I don't remember. And I said, you think it would be heat, good heat with the fans, if I don't wear a shirt? That eliminates one layer. I was completely thinking about myself because it was scorching hot in the building. I eliminate the shirt, but I keep the jacket. And I keep the bow tie. But the bow tie is not on with the shirt. It's just the bow tie and the jacket because I'm fat and it's hot. And he was like, try it. That sounds like heat. So we did. And then when the neck brace came along, of course, what's an idiot like me going to do if he's got to wear a neck brace? He's going to keep the bow tie and he's going to wear it over the neck brace.
Does Joel Gertner, the character, work as a babyface?
Quintessential Studmuffin?
Yeah.
Quintessential Studmuffin works best probably as a tweener.
Okay.
As a tweener, as maybe a Jesse Ventura type with a sharp tongue and no filter, who maybe roots for some heels and some baby faces and is some sort of shade of gray, depending on what individualistic mood he's in that day. He works that way, which was the way I was with Joey Styles on TNN towards the end. As a complete babyface is tough. They put me with Christian York and Joey Matthews as a tweener. I think it started to work, but that was right at the end and there was no time to develop it. Babyface is tough. There was a time where the limericks were getting over. People were reaching over in the front row of the guardrail to high-five me. I may have even high-fived somebody back once. And I got to the back, and Paul pulled me aside, and he said, "You are worth $1 million to me as a heel. As a babyface, you are worthless and you are replaceable." Because at the time, I was with the Dudleys and the job was to get heat. So would I have ever in any form worked as a babyface? Maybe, but I think I'd like me better as a tweener.
Do you watch any of the current product?
Yeah, all of it. All as much as I can. Yeah, still watch wrestling all the time. Yeah.
Do you feel like, and I've heard this discussed on other podcasts, do you feel like guys are now afraid to get legitimate heat?
I don't know if most people are so much afraid to get heat. It's harder to get heat. Just because, I don't know whether it's the generation, the time, the chronology of it all. I don't know whether it's social media and its involvement. I don't know whether it's harder to shock because you can say shit at 8 o'clock now on basic cable. I don't know whether, even though you can say shit at 8 o'clock on basic cable, there's a lot more political correctness, right? Like, are people afraid to get heat now? Well, I don't know, but All in the Family was on TV 45 years ago, and All in the Family wouldn't be on TV today. So is it a function of people being scared to get heat? No. It is harder. it's more like shepherding cats to know what the optimal kind of heat is to get and then procure it, if that makes any kind of sense.
No, it does. Yeah, I do agree with that. I feel like there's really nothing that a person could do now. I mean, I'm talking in wrestling terms. There's obviously things people can do, regular people. Like I could go right now and do something awful on Twitter and I'd get a ton of, but I'm saying like as the character, I feel like also too, especially with the bigger federations, like there's so many blurred lines now. Like this guy's on TV and he's trying to be hated, but then 2 minutes later on their same television show, you'll see that guy like meeting a Make-A-Wish kid. And you're like, what am I supposed to believe? Where, yeah, like I want to hate Roman Reigns, but
I was just about to say, you're in my head. Roman Reigns is getting great heat, right? With the dysfunctional family stuff.
Right.
Roman Reigns is great at getting heat.
Yeah.
But number one, he's already done I'm a Little Teapot with his daughter. And number two, you're going to show him doing good things for his community and doing stuff like Make-A-Wish.
Yeah.
So at that point, am I going to, up against WWE's production, their money, their machine, up against Roman Reigns, his personal experiences and his tenure and everything he's learned and done and his legacy and his family. Am I going to say that Eddie Kingston is a better heel than Roman Reigns today? I could say it, and it's arguable. To some people, it's not arguable at all. Roman Reigns is the winner. To some people, there's no debate. Eddie Kingston is the winner. I know I love watching Roman Reigns, but like you say, it's part of a show. You suspend disbelief, and then 10 minutes later, you see him being nice. Whereas not to say AEW wouldn't do it, because they've got a lot going on. They're a corporate structure. They do a lot for their community. And for all I know, they'll go ahead and by next week, it won't make sense that I'm saying this, but if Eddie Kingston for now is the kind of guy that stepped away from that and he's a fresher face as a heel, some of the stuff that he does is not to say it's more believable, but you see what I'm getting at? Like,
yes.
It's a testament to what you said. Like, it's tough to get and keep the same kind of heat that guys would get in the past because there's so much going on where even as a heel, if you're a top enough guy and you want to be a face of the company, you can't be a heel all the time.
Yeah. I'll tell you one guy who is, and he's an absolute jerk off. It's MJF.
Yeah, he keeps the gimmick all the time, conventions and everything, which is a blast, which is fun. He'll sell, MJF's going to show up and he's going to sell autographs. And then he gets to his table and he's selling autographs for $500 a piece. Like, I love that.
Yeah. He was on the show. He was a jerk to me for an hour.
That's tremendous.
Yeah. So I can say he's a jerk because I have the video proof of it happening. So
that's tremendous.
Before I let you go, where can people find Joel Gertner now?
Oh man, my YouTube channel just passed 1,000 subscribers. It's relatively new.
Nice.
Yeah. So hit that up. It's just Joel Gertner. Find that on YouTube. Not a lot of live going on, right? COVID and everything else. I do video messages on Cameo
and
on Celeb VM. So you can find me Cameo/Joel Gertner, Celeb VM/Joel Gertner. I've got t-shirts for sale on Pro Wrestling Tees. On the web, on social media, you can find me on Twitter at Studmuffin Says and Instagram at Quintessential Studmuffin. I've got a podcast called the 69-Minute Eargasm. I've got another one starting up called Extreme Championship Wednesday. And I've got one with Blue Meanie and Josh Chernoff. We're going to do one right around January 1st, and we're going to see what the reception is for that, but it seems really strong now. So that's going to be on ad-free shows, and hopefully that's weekly, monthly, whatever the demand is, it'll be. But that's going to be, That Was Extreme is going to be the name of that one. So That Was Extreme, 69-Minute Eargasm, and soon to be Extreme Championship Wednesday are the podcasts. The YouTube channel, please hit me up on Instagram and on Twitter. I'm very, very interactive on it. Ask my wife. She hates it. I'm on the phone all day. So now she's okay with it.
That's great. I'll be sure to link out to all that stuff. And Joel, thanks a lot for your time, man.
Thank you, boss. I appreciate it.
And that brings another episode of Not About Wrestling to a close. Guests of the Not About Wrestling show stay in their own damn houses. If you like the show, please share it on social or leave a review on iTunes. And remember to subscribe to Not About Wrestling on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com/BroBible and find the Not About Wrestling section. Thanks again for listening or watching, and see you all next week. Well, I won't see you at all. You know what I mean.